Hi, welcome to Astrology and Earth Magic. I'm Jen, and with this video, we start our Origins of Christmas series. So with each video during this series, I'll describe those old traditions and how they have influenced the Christmas that we still celebrate today. This was Saturnalia, Yule, and the winter solstice. And with each, I will be adding a fun, festive recipe that you can try at the end. So this video is about Saturnalia. It's really the one that comes first on the calendar, beginning on the 17th, and it lasts about a week. So this was an ancient Roman celebration honoring the Roman god of agriculture, that is Saturn, obviously, Saturnalia. So originally it began in Saturn's temple, and it was with the unbinding of the statue of Saturn that is bound, and they unbinded it, and after a priest performs a sacrifice, most likely of, a bull or a cow or something, that they're going to have for the feast, they take the statue and they bring it so it can sit with them at the main banquet table to be present with the celebrations. So no businesses were allowed to be open at this time, and all the people, owners, slaves, there was no hierarchy. They all gathered together and they would celebrate together all as an equal. So they all, during this time, they would don a red felt cap. So that would kind of be that symbolism of equality and freedom. So red felt hat, wonder where that came from. So kind of like something like this. So the owners, even at this time, because of this equality, the roles were kind of reversed almost. And the owners would have served the slaves. I'm sure the slaves would have cooked and prepared the meal and prepared the table and everything. But they were allowed to sit at the table with everybody else. They were also allowed to openly talk, almost like roasting their owners. So pretty much saying whatever they felt that they wanted to say. So a lot of it kind of reminds me of what the office Christmas parties are like now, thrown by the owners, and really just to celebrate the people that work for them. Saturn in astrology is known for being restrictive, disciplined, structured, that mature and responsible adult in the room. Sometimes, learning harsh karmic lessons when Saturn comes along. So you want to keep this in mind with the office party celebrations, because you don't want to be that person that gets way too drunk, tells your boss off, because even though at this time, even with Saturnalia, they did allow the slaves to talk openly and even talk back and say whatever they wanted to the owners. I'm sure that the owners kind of, would put that in a little, lockbox in their brain and be like, okay, I'll remember this afterwards, because it still was that hierarchy. So you don't want to do anything stupid. So keep all that in mind, because you don't want to learn those harsh karmic lessons from Saturn. But with Saturnalia, this was a much different celebration than you would think it would be, when you're celebrating Saturn, this really rigid god. This was a time for people to just let loose and release the fears and stresses that they had this time of year, and not let just this darkness overwhelm them and consume them. Kind of almost like a ancient relief of seasonal depression, and just kind of letting things all hang out and just, revel rousing. So that rigidity and order again was flipped, and there was dancing, drinking, feasting, just complete debauchery. Gambling that normally was forbidden was allowed, and owners would gamble with their slaves, and it was all just celebrating in that kind of Roman kind of way. So this was also an agricultural celebration. So like many of the old traditions, most were based on moon phases and the agricultural celebration. So this is and the agriculture and the harvest. And since Saturn is the god of agriculture, it seemed just fitting. So this also, going along with the moon phases, this accompanies the winter solstice. So this is when the sun moves into Capricorn. And of course, who's Capricorn ruled by? Saturn. So again, we see those tie-ins with Wicca and with Saturnalia and the solstice and Yule and Christmas. It all kind of just ties together. So, of course, with Saturn and astrology, of course, everything back then was based on, what the sun was doing, what the moon was doing, and what the planets were doing. And that's how they, pretty much that's what begins the seasons. That's what changes all the seasons. So Saturn is that cold, dry planet, just like the season that it represents. In the winter, it's cold and dry, unless it's snowing and awful. But the solstice, it actually is when you see the light starting to triumph over the darkness. So we'll get into that with our winter solstice video that's coming up. But this is kind of what brings about that Saturn, and that kind of like that, the people celebrate the coming of the light and they're excited for it, and they really just do it to encourage that sun to come back. So they do this partying for that reason. Back in their homes, the people would decorate their homes with greenery, like this kind of stuff left all over, and adorning their doors, wreaths on their doorway, and they also would have candles in the windows like this, and they would fill their tables with nuts and figs and fruits of the season, the popularity of the Nutcracker. So a lot of the same ways that we still decorate our homes today. And I know I'm even taking on a very kind of a natural look and trying to keep things very natural. So I've brought lots of the greenery in. So me and Chili, my dog, which you've seen in other videos, we'll go out in the woods, we'll find the greenery that I know will last throughout the season, and we'll make all sorts of stuff out of it. We're making ornaments for the tree, and so this is what kind of brings that, and it's still celebrated today. It's still the way we decorate our homes today and during Christmas season. People also would exchange gifts throughout the days of the celebration. Kind of think about the 12 Days of Christmas song, when you get a different gift every day. So back then, the gifts would be like cards or poems, candles, little figurines, or maybe even some baked goods that they would exchange with each other. Something really special, something that they put thought into, because what they say, it's the thought that counts. So with this in mind, we are going to bake today some iced honey gingerbread cookies. So check this out. I think you'll enjoy it, and they came out delicious. So for our Saturnalia celebration, we are going to make some gingerbread honey cookies with a sugar glaze on top. So here are the ingredients if you'd like to make them for your celebration. So you're gonna need some butter, granulated sugar, honey, of course. I have a little wildflower and a little bit of regular honey. Choose what you like, but this is with ginger, so you're gonna wanna have something that kind of blends the flavors. So we have some ground ginger here, and I suggest buying ground ginger and not grinding it yourself, because ow, my arms kill. We need an egg, need some baking soda, of course some flour, a little bit of salt, some ground cinnamon, some ground cloves. Again, buy it ground, a lot easier. We're gonna grind them ourselves. And for the icing, we are going to use some powdered sugar and a little bit of water to make that icing. So let's bake. So to our 4 cups of flour, I'm going to add our sugar. We are going to add our salt. It's kosher salt. So that's what I'm using. We're going to add our ground ginger. Again, buy it ground. Pro tip for you. And then we have our ground nutmeg. Nutmeg's way easier to grind, or not nutmeg, I'm sorry, cloves. And cloves are way easier to grind yourself. So if you only have regular cloves and not ground cloves, use those. That took us 2 seconds. We want to add our cinnamon, our cinnamon. And then we want to add, finally, our baking soda. So all of our dry ingredients together, and we just want to give it a little whisk and get it all mixed up. Okay, so we have it nice and incorporated all together. So next you want to add your wet ingredients. So here we go. We're adding an egg, doing this one-handed. Let's see how we do. Wow, not bad. Good job. Then we are going to add our, I put that in my honey. That was good. Okay, so we'll just make that disappear. And then we add our egg now, or our butter. Now I melt my butter. I know it calls for softened butter. Most recipes do, but I always melt my butter. It's way easier to work with, and I haven't had any complaints yet. And then finally we are adding our honey, and we're going to get that in there. And then we are going to mix all this up and just get it all nice and incorporated and pop it in the fridge, because working with newly made dough is really difficult. So popping it in the fridge for a little bit will make it that much easier. So you want to incorporate all the ingredients really well. So I'm really just using this paddle, or it's a spatula, to get everything together. Then I'm going to go in and really get it good and use my hands. Of course, the rings are going to come off and it's really messy. So you're going to want to just really get in there, get your hands dirty. If you have a stand mixer, it's a lot easier to use that. I don't have one that's big enough for this recipe, so maybe Christmas is coming, so we'll see. So now that we have our dough made into this kind of little lump, I'm gonna put it in the fridge. It's really easy to work with, this kind of dough, so you don't really have to chill it, but I'm still going to. It makes it a lot easier. So I'm gonna pop it in the fridge for about a couple hours probably, and then we will show how to make the frosting and pop them in the oven. So our dough is nice and chilled and easy to work with. So we had it in the oven, or in the fridge, for about 4 hours or so. So then you want to break off some little balls, and what you want to do is press them down. Now you can use your hand and just make a circular press like this, or if you have like a cookie press that can put maybe a picture on, or like a nice, that will hold the icing once we go to put the icing on. So let's take care of this, and then we're gonna throw them in the oven. And here they are. You can see I made the little wells to put the icing in, and who doesn't want a well full of icing? You can also, again, use the stamps that create little pictures, and the icing will stick in that. So now it is going to our 350 degree oven, and we're gonna let them bake before we ice them. And now our beautiful cookies are out of the oven, and we have made our glaze, which is just powdered sugar and water, and we can just brush that right on the top, just like that, and let them cool. So we're going to, once they cool down a little bit, we're going to transfer them to the cooling racks, give them a little bit, and then they'll be all set for eating. Ooh, they look pretty ooey goody good. So I hope you enjoyed that. So again, why not add a little Saturnalia to your celebrations? I mean, most of us do it anyway, and we incorporate those old traditions with the new. Maybe make those old traditions new again and kind of change them to see how they work with your family and how they might work for you. So next video in this series, we're going to talk about the winter solstice, and then followed by Yule. And with each video, again, we are going to have more fun and festive recipes. So be sure to subscribe, get notified of the upcoming videos, because you won't want to miss them. So let's celebrate the season together, and cheers, everybody. So good. A little can of ale to go along with it. So yummy. So enjoy your season, and I will see you soon. Bye.